Thank you for joining us on this special episode of Dads Without Dads, or simply DWD. I am super excited about today's guest because he's one of the people that have inspired me in life through the many things that he does, including his ability to be a great dad and a great husband. And that's a rare combination. But also, I'd like to say that my guest today is a music artist, not just a music artist, but a musician, an all-rounder, a music producer, a farmer, a dad. What else? A media guru, and so many other credentials that we might find out as we speak to him today. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the Honorable, the Rebel of Honor, the one and only Maiko Zulu. Drum roll.
Yes, I.
Yes, I. How's it going?
Very good, very good. How's it going with you?
It's going. We are learning.
I'm very excited to be on this podcast, man.
Thank you. I am
yeah.
more excited to host you because of who you are in my life and the inspiration that you have provided, both when I have watched you and also when I've interacted with you. Right from the time I was a little boy in my teens, following you around and trying to watch you perform, and you giving me a platform to be on stage, at this Bill Buster event that was happening in my hometown, Kabwe.
At Clayton Park.
At Clayton Park, yes.
Yeah.
And that and just how that boosted my confidence to know that if he can allow me to be on this stage, then it means that if you can spot me from the crowd and put me on that stage, then it means I can be on any other stage. And now we are winning. And then also when I grew up and I joined the industry after getting inspired by your music and your moves, I still found myself joining, the Zambia Association of Musicians. And in that association, I'm proud to say I'm one of the people that voted for you. For you to become the president of the association. And then I had to go through your mentorship to learn from you how to be a leader and how to also just be a disciplined artist who understands his role, including the role of volunteering, because volunteering sometimes is what will even lead you to bigger things in life, even in times when others would say, what's in it for me if I attend that workshop? For me, you gave me a platform to be on places like workshops that opened up so many doors that eventually even led me to reach the highest pinnacle of my career. And for that, I thought that in my preamble, I should first appreciate you because you are such an amazing man.
I'm truly humbled, B-Flow, but to me,
Brian.
you're Brian.
Yes.
You've always been Brian. I'm so humbled, because I think you are, like your song says, you used to aspire, now you are inspiring all of us. And I think the works that you are doing, self-explanatory. And maybe I can, break a secret. When I had my 2 tenures as ZAM president, constitutionally, I couldn't run again. And a lot of people don't know how much, I really wanted Brian to take over, So that time I was a little disappointed, that you didn't take up the challenge.
Yeah.
But, here we are.
Yeah.
You are in it. And, I was the most excited person when, I was following the news of your election and,
And I remember we had a long conversation over the phone.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
you were congratulating me, and I said, I give all the credit to you, and I really want you to continue being that advisor that you've always been, because you made me do this.
and somehow, if you remember our conversation, we talked about presidents and former presidents.
Yes. That was a funny conversation.
And the need, for unity and, just,
Yeah.
yeah.
The need for there to be unity between
yeah.
former presidents and current presidents because they need each other.
Yes.
Yeah. So we hope that indeed that will be the case even in the various nations that are watching us, that former presidents and presidents should get along.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
Yes, I pray so.
Awesome. So I created this platform for men who are just determined to become better fathers in life, or even just to become the dads that they never had, because we have so many men out there in need of mentorship. Others are confused about how to go about being fathers, being dads, being present in the lives of their children, partly because maybe they never really had the tools, because they never learned from their fathers, or they never saw or witnessed or observed their fathers leading. And so it's a bit confusing to try and navigate life. Sometimes you find that it's like you have to switch it on to remember that, I have to take up the responsibility. Yeah, so I just thought that we needed to create a platform so that it's not just the women who are being taught, but also that men can be taught by way of just getting inspired by men like yourself who have managed to be good dads, despite maybe not growing up around a father. But maybe for us to truly understand what your story is, we need to take it back to when you were this little boy. Can you describe the setup in your home and your family?
Well, for me, apparently I never grew up with a dad, because my parents unfortunately divorced when I was just about a year and a few months, So it was a whole different kind of life, because like most boys and girls in my days, we were raised by grandparents, So I was fortunate to have a very loving grandmother and grandfather, and I grew up in a rural area, apparently. In Kaweruro, apparently.
Okay.
Yes. The much Sompola area there.
Yes.
So life was not as we see it today. In our days we had no TV then, we had no social media, So we did a lot of hands-on jobs, So that laid the foundation for us, to be creative. My first vocal cords were opened up while chasing after goats, my grandfather's goats. I was a goat herder, So my interaction with animals, apparently I have a very good hand with animals. When we travel with my wife, I think she has some images. Whenever we travel, we have this experience either of birds, whether it's at a mall, at an airport. The last time we were in South Africa, these doves just came. I was eating a donut, a ring donut, and, they just came and started eating with me.
Wow.
So those are some of my fatherhood, really. I'm glad you said I'm a good father. I try to be a good father. But my fatherhood is out of like a learner. I see myself as learning all the time because it's always new. Even now when my children are adults, there is still a certain kind of responsibility that I bear with my children, towards my children. And sometimes it can be challenging, One of my children is in the spotlight, Muiza.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes, your children have to bear insults because of what you post. You also have to bear insults because of what your children maybe post on social media, and So it's it can be a challenging journey. But again, we have this fortunate to have this foundation as a small family, which we have. I can boast, which I have tried, sort of to keep together,
Yes.
because that is my responsibility. I think God given, and so we have a close knit family, and right now I'm very good friends with my grandchild.
Oh, yeah.
So we are transferring, some of our what we are, what we do, what we eat, our characters. I know it can be controversial for us as artists. A lot of people have questions. How do you raise children?
Yeah.
Because first of all, you were St. Michael and you were what doorway. So how do you manage to raise a family? You're in Germany and things like that. But
But if only
we
people had an idea of how well you have raised your family, then maybe it's interesting. If they they look at your family, then maybe the stereotypes may reduce.
we are only jumpy, on social media and things like that. When we're at home, we know that we have a responsibility, not just with immediate family, but also the community around us. I live in a rural community now, where I have to listen to a lot of people's sentiments, problems, views. We have a lot of youth that fraternize our place in 9 Miles. So, we tend to learn certain traits in parenthood from people who are not even our children. A young boy from Kaputa who is a student in Lusaka trying to pursue a medical career, comes to you with a unique problem, a problem that, a Lusaka dad, will not understand. So you have to try and navigate, through, trying to advise these young people. We have a lot of problems with substance abuse. A lot of people see me, as the most high, on social media. But outside social media, I have a huge responsibility trying to, get the young people to stay off substances.
Right. I learned this when you and I did a countrywide tour called Pass Me the Mic. As I was moving around with you from one province to another, I got to learn that you play the role of rehabilitation also, like where parents actually bring some of their children who are addicted to certain their substances to you, and you get to be the one to actually help them get out of those addictions. I was really moved by that.
It's that is why sometimes an artist lives 2 lives or more than 2 lives. A lot of people will never have an idea. Sometimes some of the things we do at midnight, where you wake up, go into a ward at a hospital, and we have kept these things away from the spotlight, because for us, my family and I, we feel a lot of people misuse their support. If I go into a hospital at midnight, I go without cameras because I go there wholeheartedly. I do not want to use that occasion, to be on the spotlight. I would rather be on Brian's program, and use it as a platform than, use, somebody's predicament, as a source of, as a platform. Yeah. So like sometimes we are humbled when people recognize us through nominations like humanitarian awards. which you and I have been together nominated in the same categories. Maybe some of them see what we do, you know, in the middle of the night, you know, when everybody's sleeping. You see that police officer at a traffic stop, you take them a hot cup of tea, you have a chat, you know. Yeah, so...
You actually once also shared with me a story of sometimes how you also do, for lack of a better term, like citizen arrests when someone is abrogating the law.
Yes.
And you go after them to just go and correct them. For example, you told me of an instance where someone was driving and I think they had a child in front and you had to go after them to go and correct that situation.
Especially on Sundays, we do that because, I mean, there's a lot of, I think RATSA also needs to take into consideration that Sunday is a day when a lot of children are put in harm's way in the name of taking them to church, you know. So a lot of children abandoned unsafely in motor vehicles, being driven to church. Church is a good thing, but let's take our children especially to church in a safe manner, you know, because there's a lot of road traffic accidents, you know, that where children are victims, you know, so we can avoid some of these things, yes.
Yeah, that's true, that's true. No, I really, really love those attributes about you, especially the integrity, because someone defines integrity as what you do when no one is looking. These are the things that we do on social media to try and show people that we are doing these things. Sometimes, yes, they may be good to inspire another person out there, but what's the real motive behind what you're doing to post? Because sometimes I think we overdo it. You know, you're posting every moment, like you said, someone else's predicament and whatnot. And yes, you will get the attention. Sometimes you even get the praise. But there are people who are doing these things truly and genuinely from the heart, where they don't even let the right hand or the left hand see what the right hand has been doing. And for that, I just want to commend you. I'd like you to just tell us a bit about your dad. I don't know. You rarely talk about your father. I know where your mom is, and and I was there last week. I was with Marita.
Marita, yes. Well, my dad, apparently, we never spent a lot of time together because, like I mentioned, they divorced with my mom when I was very little. But I was privileged, you know, to be the one to lay him to rest after I died. Wow. You know, so the experience, and, you know, I've never really opened up about my family in this way, but because it's your program, you know, and I think sometimes we need to say these things. First of all, you should understand that I went through a lot of victimization as a child because of my skin tone. Okay? My mother is half caste. My grandfather on my mother's side was a white man, a Scottish man. Then my father was fairly light as well. So, you know, in my family, we were 5. And unfortunately, I'm the only one left. So the 5 of us, we were all different. If you look at me sitting with my brother those days, it was like me sitting with you. People would never think we are from the same father, same mother.
Yeah.
You know, so this was very unique. And a lot of times we faced abuse, you know, in school, Kamunubu, you know, that was in Kabwata when you say Munubu those days, it's saying Mubunu.
Oh,
so we used to like reverse
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, things like that. So you had to find ways, you know, of proving, you know, that you were just an ordinary kid like everybody else. In the family, I remember, you know, because my mom had custody of us after the divorce. And my father was staying in Livingstone. I was born in Livingstone. And my mother, shifted to Lusaka, where she found a home. And, after some time of us staying with grandparents, my mother got us to the city, My mother apparently was one of the first tenants in Kawata Estates.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and she's still there.
It's still there.
House number 1313.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was weird sometimes because my father, I didn't guy now, Sometimes he would come, drive all the way from Livingstone in his Datsun 1000.
Yeah.
Bah, let's go. And us, you see your dad, you're
yeah.
excited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Papa, mwaingira motoka, you are in Livingstone. In the middle of the night.
Mom is not home?
Mom is at work.
Okay.
Mom apparently used to do double shifts.
Okay.
She used to be a secretary and she used to be a police officer.
Oh.
Yeah, she even had the Castar,
Oh.
Yeah, she was partners with Patel, if you knew Patel in the flying squad.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Wow.
So that's how tough Marita was.
Wow.
Yeah, she used to. So my dad would get us to Livingstone and you see a police vehicle, maybe 03. Yeah, Isa.
Wow.
Mom comes again in a Belmont, police Belmont. I don't know if you know Belmont. It was a police car, like an American thing.
Wow.
Yes. 3 gears. She would grab us, and things like that. So that was life for us. If you see dad, you know that Vaisa could send that wire,
excited
and
about
again,
going to be with
Mom
dad
is
and going to
coming to get
Livingstone
us.
and the ride itself.
Yes, So for me, dad was my grandfather. He was also my step-grandfather, apparently, because he wasn't the real father to my mom. I told you my mom's father was some Scottish construction worker in Luansha those days and things like that. So it was strange. So we had neighbors who had dads, So it was dad and things like that, But yeah, but those days, the type of society that I lived in, made things comfortable for children in the sense that every dad was everybody's dad.
Wow.
In my neighborhood, when the adults are having something at one home, you would be in the next house. You don't even mind what you're going to eat. People cook there. Society was different then. It was real social living.
Yeah.
You wouldn't notice because sometimes when there's a funeral in the neighborhood, children would be excluded. So, you are in one house, auntie whose house, everybody was auntie, everybody was uncle, So we learned a lot from people who were not our parents, how to handle children, because the way we were handled, we learned from that, and the way our peers were being handled, So a lot of experience for me as a father is what I picked up,
All these different father figures.
Father figures and mother figures.
Yes.
Because a lot of women, played a fatherly role, A lot of women were strong women, and that is why I always praise my mother, even after losing all her 4 children out of 5, she's still standing strong in the church, and trying to preach in front there, which, yeah.
Oh, she preaches?
Yes, my mother is a priest, actually, in the Anglican Church. One of the first female priests.
Oh.
We were a Christian family. Okay, I can say we are because I still belong to her family, despite me being Rastafarian and things like that, strict, so Boys Brigade, I can even tell you the BB prayer even now,
Really?
Yes.
You can?
Yes. You know, even some of the Girls Brigade things, because my mom was president for the Girls Brigade for a long time. During childhood, we were mass servers. You know, I was a mass server in the Cathedral of the Holy Cross.
That's
Yes.
more like an
An altar
altar boy.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So every Sunday we exchanged roles. Today in Ulipa Cross. Tomorrow, next week you are on the essence. You know, the other week you are the one, with the chalice.
Wow.
Yes.
This is amazing. This is interesting.
Mhm.
I also found out that you are connected to the champion Lotse Mwale.
Yes. First of all, he was a distant cousin, very distant, even before the actual relationship, because apparently our firstborn, my sister, was married to him, and that's the mother to Gundi, DJ Gundi Groove.
Wow, what an interesting family.
Yes, and along the way, apparently, you would be interested to know this. I used to be an amateur boxer, and it was Loti Mwale who said, I need to change your career.
Oh.
So he introduced me to a musical group in the ghetto in Mississippi, because he had a lot of friends in the ghetto, and at Uweka, there used to be 4 bands there. So he said, he used to call me Bob.
As Bob Marley?
Yes.
Like we've all called you since time
because
immemorial.
I was very close with him in some of his last fights. I was the little boy who always carried his bag when going to fight, because I used to clean his boots, everything. I was in charge of his kit, and even his training program for a long time. I was given that responsibility as a very young boy.
Wow.
So I grew up in boxing circles. All the boxers around, they knew me. And even after they divorced with my sister, I moved on to live with him.
Oh, wow.
Yes, because we were such, close friends.
So close that the divorce couldn't even separate you.
I remember, when he lost to Saad Muhammad, the world title fight. Yeah. When he arrived, the first thing, he said, Bob, what quiz? And he said, sorry, boy, walinguma.
Wow.
So, and I mean, before he even spoke to the media and all that, So for me,
what did those words translate to? How did you interpret those words when he said, sorry, boy, walinguma?
For me, I realized how much faith he had, in this little boy, who was not only his brother-in-law, but just a friend, So it was very emotional for me, and he removed from his bag, a Walkman. Those days, the cassettes thing. So he bought me this red Walkman, and a few clothes here and there, So, and for me, him, changing my career from amateur boxing to music, that's the best thing anybody could ever done for me.
Yeah.
Because in music, I feel narifika.
I wonder how he actually noticed it.
Yes, because he had friends, like Jagari Chanda, In fact, the first guitar chords I ever learned was from Uncle Jagari.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So you go way back with Uncle Jagari?
way back, way back. Some stories are not even for the public, you know.
I can
They're
only
still
imagine.
classified, you know. But Uncle Jagga and I, you know, even the name St. Michael. I was never St. Michael when I was starting. I called myself Ras Michael.
Okay.
You know, yeah. Then Uncle Jaggari and Lottie's friend, he was called Peter. Uncle Peter. Peter, they used to call him Peter Zenga.
Okay.
You know, he used to work for Eagle Travel those days. You know, that was a travel company.
Okay.
And Zambia Airways, you know. So he was a don.
Wow.
And he's the one who named me St. Michael.
Oh.
Yes, he said, you, walibasana bati, pita mumutu mmowe. So twala kuinika St. Michael.
Yeah.
So that's how St. Michael was coined.
Wow.
You know, so it was in these, I drove a Range Rover when I was a teenager. Those very first Range Rovers, not these that you are seeing, the Land Rover. Yes. You know, an MG.
Wow.
A Mustang.
Wow.
Those original fastback Mustang, because Lottie loved cars. I mean, he was based in the UK. He was fighting in the States, in Germany. He was buying cars like clothes. Wow. So we had the privilege, you know. And in my house, my mother's house, the Kabwata Estates, that's where the drummer for Pongozi, Uncle Chris, was living in the other bedroom.
Wow.
Yes. Chris Zebitembo. So he had married my cousin, Janet, who is the auntie to Sipo.
All the superstars were marrying your sisters.
Yes. To
that
Sipo.
Should give us an idea of how beautiful mom is and the children that she gave birth to.
Yes. Yes. So it was a family of that was close to these celebrities. Pongozi used to come. They used to chill there at my mother's place. He was living in Liwala, you know. So Uncle Ricky was living in our street. Yes. Then we had City of Lusaka footballers also staying in our street. So it was like the Dallas.
Yes.
You know, that's where
the real Dallas name
yes,
comes from.
Yes.
When it was Dallas City for sure.
Yes. But,
so you had some really amazing father figures in your life. I can tell that you were surrounded by all these great men, successful men. And I think that in itself also in a way boosted your self-esteem growing up, because when I look at you, you are a very confident man. You are reserved, but that doesn't mean you can't be confident. You're reserved, yes, you are introverted, but you're confident and you stand up for what's right. You stand up for what you believe in. I think the whole nation has always known you like that, to be that person that speaks even when it's necessary. You speak up and you've never favored any bad system. You've always challenged anything that you feel does not sit well with the people. So I think, big ups to all these men that have played a role and the women that have played a role in raising you. Yeah.
I thank them too. And, you know, in inspiring others, you know, you have done a lot of amazing works in the area of, you know, society, how we instill values into society. You know, you've been very impartial, you know, not because you are here, but I've worked with you on certain programs, you know, where, you know, we've gotten to the real people, you know, not social media. You know, we've actually been into people's homes, you know, people's backyards. And, you know, for me, when I see artists, you know, sparing their time in, you know, things that may not really be artistic, like this program, for example, for me, I feel that, you know, I'm living in the best time of my life.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Before I get emotional about those wonderful compliments coming from a wonderful man, and I think men should normalize giving other men their flowers. I give him his flowers. But for now, we take a break. watching Dads Without Dads, and I am chatting with a dad without a dad, and his name is Maiko Zulu. I love how you love your family.
Wow. Yeah.
Love how you love your wife and how you love your children. And I've heard so many people, especially because we don't really know, nobody really knows the intricate details of your marriage and your family. Obviously, like any other home, you do have your fair share of the problems or misunderstandings or whatnot. But we've never ever heard those things in the public because of how well you have kept that close-knit family that you described earlier. And that's just amazing. I am interested to know something. Among your children, one of them is in the limelight and she's female. We have seen you publicly protect her. And that's, I believe, a role of a father, to be a protector, and the role of a husband also to be a protector. I just want you to just maybe speak more about the importance of being a protector and just basically, especially when you are a girl dad. Yeah, what's the importance of a girl having that protection of a father? What does it do for her? Yeah. Though she's not a girl anymore, she's a lady now.
Yeah. Oh, but they're always girls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. My mother, sometimes she has a friend. They say, wait on me, and then we say, the girls are going out.
At their age.
Yeah. But it's extremely important, that men, not just fathers, provide a certain kind of safety net for our female folk and precisely our female children, Women are still disadvantaged, Brian. And it's going to take, I think, another century or more for us to reverse the trend. And I think studies even in Europe have shown that, the gender gap is far from being closed, which is a cause, for action for all of us, because our girls, look at fathers differently from mothers, Yes, a mother is always a mother. You can never substitute a mother for anything, but the bond that is created between a girl child and the father, can be more than special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate now.
Yes. To a point where, well, for me, I'll tell you categorically, Brian, for my family, it's the reason I buy guns. It's the reason I buy guns, just for my family.
Yeah.
If I was alone and things like that, I wouldn't mind so much.
Talking about guns, before you even continue, I have a memory from, I can't remember the year, but I was very young, and we used to live in Libala with my uncle, and you were our neighbors, so we used to live just behind your house. And one day you fired because there were some thieves around, and that's when I learned that this Rasta man, he's got guns.
Now
I understand why you buy the guns.
Let President Sata, he loved guns.
He even declared them one time at the Toyota Cressida and 7 guns.
But again, you need a certain level-headedness, for you to handle weapons. They can be dangerous, and I think we've seen fatalities, in families, I wouldn't want to bring some names here, but I think it's important to recognize that in as much as, weapons are good things for protection, but they can also be catastrophic if they're in the wrong hands. Yeah. But back to the point, I'm very protective of my family because, like you said, they know, my family are the only ones who know why I'm an evangelist, for example.
I hope you get the gist. In this world, there are evangelists and evangelists.
So they know me inside out. My wife will know when my health is failing, for example. My children know, because sometimes we are strong as men to people in the public.
Yeah.
They will never know
The
some of
outside
the
world.
ailments we go through. Some of us are finished. We are sick inside, physically, spiritually, So it's people that are close to us. Sometimes, that because the family is like a secret society.
Right.
To a large
Yeah,
extent.
yeah.
Once you say me and Malaika's mother have decided to make a family, it stops being the family where you are from.
Yes.
Government has changed.
Right.
The rules have changed. Like in my family, I'll tell you, I'm the boss. Yes. So whether you bring issues of women's watwati, shanshani, in democracy, no,
You take charge.
There is no democracy in my.
We want to learn that reality.
I'm a positive dictator.
Okay.
Yes.
Positive.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you're there to provide direction.
Yes. That's why even democracy, to protect it, to safeguard it, you need sometimes weapons. That is why we have UN to protect world peace. And UN has an army. So in my family, I'm the general.
I love this.
Yes. And that is why it's important that what happens within my family, I take responsibility, and what you do to my family, I may take responsibility as well, So sometimes you would think you are attacking Muiza, for lack of a better example.
Yeah.
Yes. For me, it's loyalty. It's like brotherhood. When my brothers were alive, if I find my brother fighting, straight I go to the other guy.
You will find out later what caused the fight.
Yes.
Even if it's your brother who was wrong.
Yes. So the other day, in fact, my brother was in a fight. He straight in, we went. After the fight, then we find out. Then my cousin says, ni wapongozi wake wamlete Nzomenyi. But those days I thought it was not a case.
Okay. I mean, you're wapongozi.
Mom came. Imwe. Joe, we used to call him Joe Satan. Imwe Joe, mwani hata wantu. Yanti ni wantuli ni wita ni hata. Ni wapongozi wa Titus. Yeah. So, as a father figure, you need to know that you are in charge of lives. You, as Brian, you need to understand that whatever you do, even if people say, no, President Chalila, Oku, what, on top of the world, at the end of the day, you need to know that your first responsibility starts with that little Malaika. Wow. Yes. Because whether you are king, you are the richest, you are Midas, who turns anything into gold. At the end of the day, you have a soft spot, and your soft spot should be your family by default. Wow. Yes. That's is deep. Your responsibility, especially if you fathered someone, if you've sired, you've created life. You need to know that you are responsible for that life and all the other lives that surround that life.
Wow.
And that is why, as a father, you can not only be caring to your own child, What about your neighbor's child? You know, that is why for
Who
me,
might also even have
yes,
an effect on your child's life as well.
yes.
Yeah.
That is why for me and my wife, you know, sometimes we do these things in the area of children's rights.
Yes.
You know, for a long time, you know, we've been doing this, and you know,
I was with her today actually in a meeting with the UN.
yeah,
And that's one of the things that came up in that meeting when she was being described. She was being described for being a child rights activist. And that just took me back because just last week, or is it the other week, we were watching her on TV and she was performing one of her oldest songs, which is maybe like 26 years old.
yeah,
And after she finished performing, the president of the Republic of Zambia went up to make his speech and he began to talk about Sister D, saying, just like Sister D's song,
yes,
it speaks to why should an old man, why should an elderly person or a person of an older age go for a minor? You know, he explained it. The president was explaining the song.
yes.
And for me, that just took me back to how consistent you and Sister D have been in advocating for what you stand for. So I love the fact that you've just mentioned how we know you.
I watched that clip,
Yeah.
the Women's Day program, you know, and I was preparing Chihuahua, you know, so I posted something on my socials. But maybe I need to use your platform, Brian, just to also to say she's an amazing woman. Sister D has been amazing in my life, you know. I never knew, I don't know how my life would have turned out without her, because in a way, you know, she has brought me all the time. We go off track. You know, this world can be, this world is beautiful, Brian.
Yeah. I love that.
Oh,
I love
man.
that. I love that.
Yes, this
No,
world.
that's true.
Yes,
That's true.
It's
I agree.
beautiful, but
Yeah.
you know, you need someone to sometimes move you from that beauty and say,
Yes, because
the reality,
the beauty of the world can derail you completely, like where you now
brother,
just fall to the world.
yeah, brother, this is the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate to have her as a wife. Yeah.
Amazing stuff. So this episode of Dads Without Dads is powered by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And the AIDS Healthcare Foundation is also working around the world to ensure that people who might find themselves to be HIV positive after undergoing HIV tests are also linked to treatment under the care of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And the AIDS Healthcare Foundation also recently celebrated a big milestone of 2.5 million people on treatment under their care. And they provide antiretroviral treatment to people around the world, including in all 50 states in the United States of America, regardless of one's ability to pay for that medication. And so we say salute to the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, also for supporting the DWD podcast. And something amazing has been happening at the AIDS Healthcare Foundation in Zambia. They have opened 2 men's clinics. So these are men's wellness clinics. One is in Ndola, it's called New Masala. And there's also one in Lusaka, which is called Lusungu. And these are safe spaces for men where men can just sit down and just have conversations in a confidential way, but also in a non-judgmental way. So we can find out more about that. Welcome back. Maiko Zulu. I'm enjoying this conversation.
It's a different conversation, I think, and I feel it different as well, you know, because all the time, you know, we our conversations on radio, TV are never like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one
Yeah.
is it.
I would like to know something. I heard something from Sister D that can you describe how it was around the time that one of your children was born? This is Muiza. Uh, just explain to me how that journey was for you. How did you feel the time you found out you were having this baby, and also how did you play your role, or what role did you play?
Very exciting time and very uncertain again in many ways because, we had stayed for some time, I think close to 8 years, and I don't know, that's when God decided that, okay, I should give these chaps now one, because apparently we had given up to say, we may never conceive, so we traveled to Mongu, I think, for some show. When we came back, apparently after every tour, we used to tour a lot. After every tour, Sister D would get malaria.
Wow.
So yeah, we used to go to Chainama at the malaria whatever center, control center. Yes, and so we thought it was malaria until later she discovered she was pregnant. Then along the way, I think at 6 months, complications arose. There was a scare. She thought she was gonna lose the pregnancy. But fortunately it stayed. The cravings, it was crazy, man. She only wanted the chicken not from a restaurant, and she would tell, from a bar outside. She would tell at see hapa bar, see hapa nje. And she wanted soil. So I used to drive there was no soil in there. I used to live in a bedsitter near Breakpoint. Yes. There was no soil around. There were no termites. So I found trees on Ngumbo Road near the speaker's house somewhere in Long Acres. So I used to drive there all the time to go and get soil from the trees. And I used to go to Chive Paka Paka there.
That's
outside.
Pongozi's bar.
Yes, outside there was a lady who was selling chicken all the time. She was buying chicken. So that's the chicken I used to buy.
Okay.
Yes. And apparently I was out of my job at movie. Yes. We differed with management and, we left movie. So I had no job. The only thing I had on me was a bed sitter as a roof and a VW Golf Mark 1, So I started pirating in my spare time. That's how I was sustaining,
You became a taxi driver.
Yes. My pregnant wife, Wow. Yeah, it was crazy, man. So, and of all my cars, the legend was that Golf.
Imagine.
Yes, because it saved us, and when my child was born, I'll tell you a story. Before she was born, my wife was tired. I think it was almost time to deliver. I was doing everything, the water, everything, literally, because we were just the two of us. I refused for her to stay at the mother's place because I said, I'm in charge.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've always been a
Yes.
general.
So one day, and it's a true story, this woman who couldn't stand and things like that, outside, Kawata. There was a shout, hey, ule, ule, ule. The way my wife stood, you know. And
She wanted to see,
she
to have
wanted
a
to
glance.
see.
Yeah.
And I said, kansi paude wangaime. Yeah, it was very funny, you know. We laughed about it. And again, when Mwiza was born, you know, the tradition of staying with the parents. Yes, you know. For me, immediately, you know, she didn't even stay 2 weeks at the mother's place. Every day I was there to say, I want the child.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I will take care. I want the child. I want the child. So until my mother-in-law gave up and said, pasa ni mwine mwana.
Wow.
Yes, I used to take my child to antenatal. Yes, I was the only man in the queue there.
Wow.
And at some time, my wife belonged to a group called Amashiwi, an a cappella group.
Right.
There was Auntie Maureen there, Savoy, Barbara, you know, and all, you know. So they had to go on a tour to Japan,
Oh.
you know. And, you know.
I hope what I'm guessing is true or not true. You remained with the baby
I remember.
as a man?
Yes.
Wow.
I remember.
In that time?
Yes. And even in meetings, she was disciplined. Some of the people who remember my interviews, even on ZNBC, I was always with a baby at some point, you know. So I refused. I said, I'm the father to the child. So if this child is going to be raised by someone, they are going to be raised with the values of that someone. And I don't want that. I'm going to raise my child through my values, whether they are wrong values.
Yes,
or
but I
right
believe
ones,
in them.
But my values.
Powerful.
Yes.
Powerful.
So that is, we created a bond. When the mother arrived, you know, at some point she refused, you know, at the airport, you know. She had almost forgotten the mother because it was a long tour.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
You know. And so for me, raising children is a hands-on responsibility. It should not be by remote. And if you do a hands-on raising of your children, believe me, the results are going to show. You know, today I don't need to ask my daughter to call me or anything. Yeah. She knows, you know, that when the old man is not picking the phone, it could be a backache or something, you know. But if you don't create that bond, I've seen children, you know, who don't care, you know, whether their father is alive, you know, whether, you know, because they never created that bond. And we sort of broke tradition because tradition requires that children are raised by women. Yeah. Yes. You know, what do you tell your daughter when she has her first menstrual? Yeah, right. You know, so those are the things as a father to a teenage girl, you need to know that you need to buy pads for your daughter. Yes. You know? And the thing also that is maybe interesting for you, Brian, is that, you know, the time I was raising my child, you know, the time my child was born, I was I was probably the OMAPS of then. Wow. Yes. You know, but I made sure that my status as an artist never got into the way of my parenthood.
Responsibilities in the family.
So I'll share a picture sometime with you. You may have seen it. You've seen a lot of our shows, whether it's at the trade fair, whether you have to travel. I said, she's a kid. I have to go with her.
Yeah, there's a picture that's been trending actually recently where there's a crowd. It looks like a stadium. I'm not sure if it's in the showgrounds, but there's a big crowd of people and you're in the middle. It's like, I think you're trying to cross to the other side and you're
Oh,
with your daughter.
Yeah. I think I had done some skydiving then. So it was in the showgrounds, yes. So I took hands-on, because I never had a father. So I didn't know how to raise a child, man. Yeah. So in my trial and error, I said, I'm going to do what my intuition is telling me is the best thing.
You literally trusted your instinct and your
I'll
gut
do
feeling
it.
on how to go about it.
Yeah. We sent her to school. She completed her high school by 15, 16. She got her degree and stuff like that, And, for me, as a Rastaman again, as an evangelist, to raise a degree holding child, something else, man.
Yeah.
It's a plus. I don't have papers, man.
I remember how proud you were,
Yes.
actually. I saw pictures of you and Muiza at her graduation.
Yeah. We never had that opportunity, us, I mean, we had the opportunity to be in school, but circumstances, never allowed for us. We looked at survival more than a paper. What do you eat? Are you going to eat a paper that time, So for me, doing things that I never managed to do either for myself or had done for me, it's something that I feel is a duty. Yes. It's like your responsibility, the way they do social corporate responsibility. That is your bloodline responsibility. Yeah.
Wow. So, but then now I'm interested in that education aspect, because when we listen to you, even when I've attended a public lecture at the University of Zambia, where Maiko Zulu is the one conducting a public lecture, and we're there seated and we're all in awe. There was another time we were with the Center for Trade Policy and Development, and you were given an opportunity to give closing remarks. When we hear you speak, I don't think anyone can believe when you say nilibe na mapepa ine but mwana wanga na ma degree. Where do you get your education then? Because you may not have sat in a classroom or you may not have school, but you have education. How did you as a man get this education? Where did you get this education that you have? Because you're very knowledgeable about lots of things.
For me, Brian, I think education is all around us. Yeah, you don't need to look for a school for you to gain education. And now, in my time, I used to read a lot. I love to read even now. My eyes not so good anymore, but I still love to read. And I think I come from an era where you just had to know things, Brian. In my time, we knew every cabinet minister. But I can challenge the youth of today. Name at least 6 cabinet ministers in the current government.
Yala shupa kwe.
Yala shupa. Nangu inawine nshabe shivamdala. But in those days, we knew Kingsley Chinkuli, Fines Blawayo, everybody. Mahinza Chona, because in a way, fatherhood is a form of patriotism. I look at it as a way of raising patriots. Because with father figures, you create a certain loyalty, whether to you, whether to family, whether to community, whether to state. And once we have people who are patriotic, for example, to state, all of us are patriots, man, there would be no corruption. Yes, because, we would all make sure that corrupt people are not only sent to jail, but maybe executed the way China does. So, for me, I look at family as something that is beyond, a relationship between a father and a daughter or a father and a son. I look at it as a basis for nation building.
Wow.
Once you have families, that are able, people that are able to run a family. Believe me, those are the people that are able to run a state. Don't be cheated by degree holders and things like that. What have they done? They use their degrees to be corrupt. Those figures that you see, Brian, in the Auditor General's report or the Financial Intelligence Center report, they are courtesy of education.
Yes.
Yes. So
people have used education to manipulate others and to manipulate systems.
And that is why, for me, I strongly oppose the clause of saying you need a grade 12 certificate for you to be a member of parliament or a councillor or a head of state.
Right.
Oh, no. We've seen worse from people with these qualifications. And sometimes we've seen better from people without
them.
Yes. Kaunda had no degrees, man. And even at family level, look at some of the best parents. And not parents like actual father or biological. They could be your grandparents. The best, are those, if you put them in a classroom of mathematics and, you would think Nivikopo. Yeah. But those are the people that have provided leadership to people that are in high offices now. Yeah. Yes. Wow. Yes. Wow. And, wisdom is, like the Bible says, wisdom is just within reach.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes, it's, I prefer to listen, from people, who have the knowledge in a certain field, and just listen. Sometimes I go into a courtroom. If you ask me where do I get my knowledge, sometimes I go and sit. The magistrates, some of them, or the court marshals will tell you, I sit there. Wow. Listen to a case. Sometimes go to a university. Even if I never had the opportunity to enter into a lecture room, sit by the window, listen. Now we have lecture rooms that are so full, sometimes they wouldn't know you're not part of, Yeah. And, from young people, we will always learn from the young.
Wow.
Yes. Believe me, learning is not just history. We need to learn from the present. I never had a phone in my childhood. Yeah, I never had a computer. And the best person for me to teach me how to put my music on TuneCore is Brian.
Yeah.
Yes. Nobody else. I'm not going to go to my grandmother and say, Ambuya, pa Spotify ningaikepo Bwembya.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll go to my grandmother for certain kind of knowledge. Right. But that is why, this thing of ageism, where you say, no, this thing is just for adults,
Abaniba
Gen Z, no, they can't be
millennial.
They can't be in government, they can't be in cabinet. For me, and that is why I look at certain developments like, the young people in parliament, in government as things that should be commended. There are things that are in the right direction. I've always championed the cause of young people. Yeah. Yes. And that is why my children are my best friends. And now I get a lot of knowledge from my 2-year-old, almost 3 now, Xander, my grandson. You never know what you learn from these guys. Yeah. He was given a dead phone by my wife. Her phone collapsed. So when she bought a phone, she wanted to give my grandson the old one to say, I've given you a phone. He refused. Yes. They know that is not working. Why should you give me something that is not working?
Give me that other one that's working.
So all these things, Brian, are values that may be found in this thing we call fatherhood.
Powerful. As we get to wrap up Just from some of the things that you've said and how you are so educated, even without sitting in a classroom, you're so knowledgeable about a lot of things. I'm also reminded that you have also been very skilled and skillful in so many other aspects of life. Can you confirm that you are your own mechanic? Can you also confirm that you are your own builder and bricklayer?
Yes, I learned a lot from my late grandfather. We learned to be self-sufficient. You were never allowed to have a cob of maize from the family field. So where were you when everybody was planting? You had to plant your own kaline if you wanted maize, the time of harvesting.
Wow.
We were woken up. There was no boy, there was no girl. I learned to cook nshima maybe at 6, 7. Yes. Very good shima.
Wow.
Yes.
That the family can even eat.
Oh, yes. 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 So once you have people that instill certain values in you when you are still young, then, you are fortunate. You are lucky. And that is why, for me, I don't need to hire a builder. No. I don't need perhaps a darker boy, because of my back now and things like that.
Just for assistance.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I don't need to get someone to draw a plan for a house for me. Why? Don't I know how to do technical drawing, and do my own plan? Don't I know how to dig a foundation? Have I not? Is there no YouTube? Eh?
Wow.
We built our last project. Apparently, you need to come and bless it as president.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. We reached a point where we wanted to we built upstairs without stairs. So time came to do stairs. We consulted all the builders in the area. Everybody scampered.
They were saying it's impossible because the building is already up.
So I said, I'll take the risk. And you, my wife, we sat with Sister D. I said, if this thing is ever going to fall, it's you and me to blame. And I went on YouTube. Yes. Today, when people jump up and down on those stairs, they think
it was built
somebody from who has a certificate from the Engineers Institute.
Yes.
Yeah. And today I can challenge an engineer to look at the structure. Yeah, but you do these things, you have to forget failure. What draws us back in life, Brian, is failure. You to say, nizakangiwa. Failure is our greatest, fear of failure is our greatest enemy. Right. And that is why for me today, I'm proud that, sometimes I'm able to jump on the same stage with my children, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all the generation now are literally my children.
Right.
Yes. We are able to jam together. We are able to share, youthful experiences and, youthful times, some of them spliff, if you like, yeah. But that should tell you that life, the value of life, does not lie in us, as individuals only. It's a collective, and that is why you see a collection of good values. A collection of good people. Now in ZAM, for example, we have a collection of good boys and girls to me. And that is why you see positivity has come back again.
Yeah.
To the association. So leadership is like fatherhood. You are a father, And perhaps it's important that before we close the program, I relate your leadership in ZAM to you being our father now. You know, if you remember, when we revived ZAM, when we picked it up from the dustbin, literally, you know, we said we are going to incorporate everybody.
Inclusivity.
Yes. So here was a Rastaman working with gospel artists.
Yes. Even your vice president was a gospel artist, I remember, B.J. Ngosa.
And this is exactly what we are seeing now. You know, the sense of fatherhood is back. You know, we feel...
Because I had a father figure to learn from.
We feel a sense of belonging, you know. I'm rarely in these groups, I'm sure you know.
No,
but I'm very ears on the ground. I know what is discussed in all these groups, you know. So for me, when I get complaints like from artists and things like that, I know that, you know, there is a father figure somewhere, you know, and this should be replicated. You know, look at the unity that ZAM has brought in the country.
And the nation at large.
You know? And as we are going towards an election year, this is an election year, you know, it's a challenge to our comrades in the political sphere. While musicians are uniting, they are dividing. You know, while musicians are bringing the country together, they are splitting the country. And we call those good values. You know, so let's be like fathers. You know, let's be fathers to everybody. Yes.
Powerful.
The way you see Hakainda's child is the way you should see Lungu's child.
That's powerful. That's powerful. I won't let you go without us just touching a little on mental health, or even men's mental health. I'd like to know, how do you, what's the correct word? How do you maintain the stability of your mind? What do you do? What are some of the activities that you do? Do you mind sharing your secrets? And could that also be why you are forever young?
Well, for me, and thank you for bringing the question on mental health. Mental health is something that has been neglected, especially among men, you know. Some people even misinterpret Abel's song, Mwamuna Samalila. You know, even do Mwamuna Osalila. You know, I was just telling a young person before I came here who has a problem of addiction to say sometimes, because they were crying all over, I said, yes, you need to cry it out. You know, so mental health is something that we need to invest in as a country, you know, at the highest level, because a lot of our friends have gone crazy, man. A lot of our friends have died without us knowing that it's mental health issues that have caused it. As in the arts, you know, the arts are crazy. People die for trying to keep stardom, celebrity status.
Keeping up
Maintain
appearances.
it, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, where you sleep Pampasa and you want your Nikes, you know, and your Chanel bag, you know. Those issues are issues that are very complicated. So sometimes I bear with people who sometimes insult on social media, they come out. Those sometimes are signs of mental disorder. Those are serious mental health issues, Brian. And for me, I think keeping healthy is important, both mentally and physically. Yes. You know, read stuff that is going to build your intellect. You know, if you are going to quarrel constructively. Yes. If you are going to put a point across, put it constructively. I interact a lot with young people, like I told you. You know, sometimes I like to pretend to be young, you know, fall all over the ground with Xander, you know, and, you know, just to clear your mind. Yeah. Sometimes, you know, it may not be so good, and I don't encourage solitude. But sometimes you need to take yourself away from the world.
The crowds.
Yes. And look at yourself, you know, let people who care about you look at you, you know, because it's only people that are close to you that are going to tell you that, iwe boy, do wasikutengamushi bwezako, you know. People that want to, that are like lice on you, you know, vakandile. They'll tell you, mdara, black label ikuchitamushe.
So they'll tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear.
Yes. You know, so you need people around you who are going to be bold and tell you. And that is why you
The
need
painful truth.
You need mentors. You know, somebody who is going to be. For me, there are certain people I'll tell you, and it's not a secret. People like Shakarongo.
Yeah.
Those are some of the people that can stop me from going to war if I carry arms.
Yeah.
Yes. And you need those people in life. You need stopgap measures. And you need, it's like a company. A company needs a board.
Right.
Yes. It shouldn't end at the CEO.
Yeah.
You know, who is going to control
The CEO.
controller?
Who's going to control the controller?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So look for a mentor. You know, I know that some mentors are just candidates also. They'll even want to charge you for mentorship. Who charges to mentor someone?
Wow.
No.
Yeah. And that has become increasingly common.
You know, I'm a motivational speaker. I'll talk to you, but which take also.
Hey.
And that is why for us, even in our own rehab thing, we don't want to charge anybody.
Wow.
Yes, we don't charge people.
Because you're doing it out of the belief that you have that you can save a life.
Once you commercialize something beyond a certain extent, then it ceases to carry the essence of why it was created in the first place. So let us help each other in families. Look out for each other. Mental health is real, you know. And also, issues like HIV and AIDS, in as much as people seem to have forgotten about these issues are still alive in our homes. And today, a lot of young people, you know, are being infected. A lot of women in marriages, you know, us men, most of the times we've been responsible for bringing HIV
in our own homes.
In our own homes, you know. So let us remember the basics.
Yeah.
Condoms are still there, man. You know. And now, you know, with
reminds me
therapy.
It reminds me that you once had a song. You did a song way back. Willy, 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 don't be silly. HIV and the AIDS is real.
Yes, it's still real, man.
Yeah.
Yes. So for those that are on therapy, let's adhere, you know, because it's not like those days where if you are found to be positive, then
it's like a death sentence.
It's a death sentence. All hope is lost.
Yeah.
No. Now you just have to manage, you know, the condition, you know, and let us try and prevent others from contracting HIV.
Powerful. Please continue being this amazing activist. It's natural for you. It's like it comes naturally. You just do it effortlessly. Even now, the nuggets that you've shared are so powerful. And most importantly, I pray that you continue being an amazing dad. You've done your job already. You know, you've raised your kids and they are responsible. Now they are accomplished as well. You've educated them. You've done such a stellar job. I also just love how protective you are, with a sense of humor, actually, because at some point, I remember there are several times when you've been trending for protecting your family. Like this one time, Muiza was with her man somewhere. They were having a good time, you know, at some resort like this. And so they took a picture and the picture went viral and people started tagging you and saying, Maiko Zulu, come and see. Your daughter is with a guy.
Yeah.
And then you responded that, nomba udomo nakwati ne wonka mupa.
Imagine, yes. Yeah. No, I think, our children need to be given the leeway to be children, really.
Awesome.
Yes, they'll always date, whether we like it or not. So if I think you are in a better place to help them navigate, yeah, they'll find their own experience, they'll chart their own course. Yeah, so that is why for me, I've never really bothered whether my children dated or not, so yeah. I'm not that very strict of a dad in those areas.
It's amazing how you're friends with your children, and also amazing how you're friends with your wife, because I think that's a very important aspect of marriage as well, that people should be friends, because I can only imagine like now that your children have grown up and they've left your house. Now it's the two of you mainly, maybe with your grandchild. But now you need to relate just the two of you.
Yeah.
And so if you never built that foundation on friendship, I can only imagine how disastrous that may be, But it's nice to see every year we see, like I said, we don't know the intricate details of the family, but we do see once in a while you wishing each other happy anniversary, my love, and how far you've come.
She knows how far we've come, I think. I always forget the date.
But she remembers. She's the one that posts, actually. So when she posts, we see.
Yes.
Happy anniversary.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
We've enjoyed the long and exciting journey together, and I'm just praying that we live longer again together.
Yes, indeed. And when you're in the limelight, it must be very difficult, actually, when both of you are celebrities, but you're still holding your family together and your marriage together, and homes are crumbling.
Yeah.
Any home can crumble, really, so many circumstances. But at the end of the day, we need to celebrate people like yourselves who've come a long way and have still managed to hold it together regardless of whatever challenges you may have faced. So we celebrate you and we give you your flowers straight from the heart. And thank you for being my guest today on Dads Without Dads.
It's been a great experience for me. And, it's different from us, singing in the studio, Chalo Changa, and to this.
Or doing the bush protests.
And
strategizing and planning how we can help our nation.
Yes.
Amazing stuff. My guest today has been the amazing, the extraordinary Maiko Zulu, an artist, a musician, an instrumentalist, a father, a farmer, a builder. He does so many great things, and he's an activist as well for children's rights, women's rights, and youth empowerment, and so many other things that he does. And today he's just been sharing a lot of knowledge on what has built him and what has enabled him to be the great man and the great dad and the great husband that he is. And we just celebrate him, and we're amazed by the knowledge that he has shared today. We say thanks to him. We also want to say thank you to the AIDS Healthcare Foundation for supporting the Dads Without Dads podcast and its production. I want to appreciate the production team as well, as usual, our producer, the Naveen Agency, not forgetting our director, the Big Man X. Yes, Big Man X, all the way from Ex-Boyfriend Innovations. We're grateful to our DOP, Prince Gift, our production partners, Terrence Pictures, not forgetting our runner, Mushas or Keishas Mumba, as well as our logistics manager, Mr. Dennis Molongoti. And to our amazing audience, the people that watch every episode, the loyal subscribers to Bflow TV that watch every episode of Dads Without Dads and all the other podcasts that we have on this platform. Continue subscribing and let me know how you enjoyed the Maiko Zulu episode. Give us a like, comment. If you have any questions, I can guarantee you he'll be there to answer even in the comment section. And yeah, so go ahead and just post that comment if it's a big up or a question or anything that you feel spoke to you as he was explaining his life and his beliefs and his values. So thank you so much for tuning in, and see you on the next episode of DWD. We're out.